Mr. Blank, what an amazing time to be talking about doing good business, being a good company. The social responsibility on the weight of certain businesses right here in corporate America looms large. Is anyone stepping up to the plate? Do you feel Home Depot and some of the other key listed companies in America are really earning their spurs right here, right now, in terms of the social responsibility now befalls them?
Yeah, well, I think the example, the one of the examples you gave was company that I was involved in co-founding, the Home Depot, which I think, has been really based on 6, or in their case, 8 core values, and everything they've done since we founded the company, Bernie Marcus and myself, back in 1979, are still in place. And what those values are, they're all based on human relationships between, in our case, fans, customers, guests, or associates, the second group, and of course the communities that we live in. So, based on that model, which we've applied now to a football team, a soccer team, to the largest golf specialty store in America, best rated dude ranches in the West, and a foundation, is that it starts with the people we're serving on top and ends up with people like myself, or Bernie, or in this case, Craig Manier at HD at the bottom, and includes our the communities that we're connected to in every sense of the word. So I think that model does work. Has demonstrated that. Another very good friend of mine who actually did a nice commentary on the book is JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. Jamie is a great friend, and there's a tremendous organization, the largest financial institution in the world probably, and has done a great job in leading that organization based on a set of values. So there are many examples out there. Unfortunately, there are many that are not focused that way, and I think that's what the book is addressed to, those individuals. Right. And I think the younger populations today who are really demanding more of life than just making a profit. Profitability is important. I'm a capitalist, I get it, but I think this book makes the argument that there's 2 sides of this barbell. One is profitability, the other is purpose, and purpose represents itself in a variety of ways, and you don't have to compromise one for the other. You should and could have them both at the same time.
So I am curious, though, Arthur, I mean, coming from a co-founder, or coming from someone who is so entrenched in a business from the start, that ethos can sort of take over. But at some point you go public and you have all these investors out there who are demanding these sort of short-term metrics, these short-term gains, that sometimes the only way to achieve them is sometimes at the expense of some of those values, at least for certain industries. And I'm curious how you balance that out. If you are a public corporation, how do you convince the investors that maybe some of those quarter-to-quarter gains aren't as important as some of the longer-term values and the potential returns that might bring?
Well, man, my mother had an expression, and most expressions we get from our mothers usually tend out to be correct. So my mother's expression is that you do the right things for the right reasons and you live with the consequences. So if you go back to 1979, we went public in September of '81. Throughout that period of time, when I left 23 years later, our stock had grown at 48% a year, our volume had grown 49% a year, compounded growth rate, and our profitability was in the same area. But during that period of time, we never did the right thing for the short term. We always did what's right for the long term. And frankly, once the street and the investing community, the analysts understood that, they really supported that, and they appreciated that we weren't, quote, manipulating, if you will, any form of our earnings, any form of our financial performance to support the stock at a certain level. So they became long-term investors, and that's really what we're interested in, is long-term investors that were willing to stand by us. And that's true in all of our businesses today, whether it be in public companies or private companies. The people you're in connection with, they want to know what your values are. They want to know that you can stand by those values and not going to be compromised. They can be true to those values, not depending on which way the wind is blowing, but under any conditions, under any weather conditions, under any conditions from an economic standpoint.
Well, when you talk about the long term, I mean, you're a marathon runner. So when you say it's a marathon, not a sprint, after 7 marathons, you actually know what they're talking about. What lessons have you learned from training marathons, doing that extended length, that you can take into the business world?
Yeah, well, I think, Taylor, it's a great, it's a great analogy, because I think when you run a marathon, and you've run a number of them during your early life, you have to put one foot in front of the other, and you have to have the staying power to do that. And you have to think about not just how do I get through the next quarter, half a mile, but how do I get through the entire race? You have to pace yourself. You have to have the endurance to do that. You have to understand, what the goal actually is, and you don't want to outsprint yourself for the early part of the race. That's very true in business as well. All those things are true in business as well. You have a map, you have a staying power, you have a course you want to follow, and you follow it. Doesn't mean you're not flexible. Doesn't mean it doesn't change. So the beauty, I think one of the most significant parts of this book is that we took these core values from, the greatest home improvement center company in the world today. Incredible performance. Craig Memoir has done a fabulous job in continuing the culture and continuing performance of the company, but they're now translated to a football team, a soccer team, a stadium, to guest ranches, to a PGA golf retail business. And so they're identical in all these different environments.
Oh, unfortunately, that is Home Depot co-founder, hate to cut you off, author of Good Company, Arthur Blank. Thank you as always for joining us.